What's up, guys, and welcome to my ranking of all 9 Quentin Tarantino films. Hopefully you joined me and CP a couple nights ago and we did our live stream going over all of his films, written and directed. It was a lot of fun. Definitely check that out if you have not. And in that, I told you to keep an eye out for this video. CP, unfortunately, is having a little bit of a health issue right now. Nothing serious yet, but just hasn't had time to record, so don't look for his video. But as soon as his video is live, I will share it on my YouTube page for you guys to check out, so definitely keep an eye out for it still. But this is my list, all 9 Quentin Tarantino films. Now, a couple rules to get out of the way. Obviously, since I'm talking about 9 Quentin Tarantino films, I'm kind of following his own filmography. Most people would say he's done 10 films because Kill Bill was split into 2. Quentin Tarantino considers it 1 film, so I'm just following those rules. Don't shoot me, it's his rules. So, Kill Bill will be 1 film, 1 gigantic 4-hour plus long epic. And I'm also not including the films that he has written, like True Romance, like From Dusk Till Dawn, arguably The Natural Born Killers. So, if I was to include those films, I will say this, True Romance would be number 1. That is easily in my top 10 films of all time. I adore that movie to death. And as much as it would piss everybody off, I would have it at number 1 above all the films that he directed. So I knew it was probably gonna cause a lot of bullshit in the comment section. So aside from just keeping with the 9 to keep it clean, I'm also keeping those out of here just to avoid annoyance. But nonetheless, True Romance is the shit. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But as far as Quentin Tarantino films go, the ones that he has written and directed, let's start off at the bottom of the barrel. Now, I will say this as well. This guy has not directed or written a bad film. This is a list of films that start at good, go to really good, all the way up to fantastic, best of all time. So even my bottom 2 or 3 are movies that I still consider to be good movies. They just don't hit me the way that the top ones do. So that's a damn good compliment for a director that in 9 films, none of them I consider bad. So with that being said, number 9 is Jacki Brown. Now this was a film that I did not watch until I was like 21, maybe 22. This was one of my much later viewings of Quentin Tarantino's filmography. I had a lot of hype going into it because it was an oldie that I had not seen that a lot of people really praised. I've watched it twice since then, and my rating has gone up slightly, but this is just the movie of his that I just like okay. For whatever reason, the characters and the story just don't really interest me as much as some of his other films. Jacki Brown's a great character, played great by Pam Grier. You get a lot of really good characters in this, like Ordell, played by the always great Samuel Jackson, especially when he's in a Tarantino film. But characters like Max Cherry, played by Robert Forster, who actually got like an Oscar nomination that year. I don't quite get that. Even Robert De Niro's character in this doesn't really pop to me. It's a decent enough movie as far as taking an Elmore Leonard story and making it Quentin Tarantinoized. It's definitely lengthy. It's got a nice little kind of, not convoluted, but a nice little kind of caper plot where there's a lot of double crosses and things going on that you don't quite know. So it's an entertaining film. It just doesn't hit me the way that it hits everybody else. So I don't really know else how to explain it other than that. It's good, just not something that I would watch if I'm not doing a Quentin Tarantino marathon. Moving on from that is number 8, and unfortunately, I gotta give it to his newest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. If you guys have seen my review, I have a full spoiler-free review out. It's like a good 19 minutes, so I give lots of thoughts. This movie really was a struggle to get through. It's very long. It's at least 45 minutes too long. Like, I know people say that's sacrilege. Tarantino could do a 9-hour movie and every minute you just linger on with some fans. I'm not one of them. I love Tarantino to death. I don't give it a free pass because he's the name on the poster. So this movie was way too long. It was very self-indulgent. It's not much of a plot going on. It's just Quentin Tarantino giving a lot of love letter to the 60s and 60s Hollywood, which is great. It's cool. He does a lot of really cool things with it, recreating certain aspects of filmmaking and TV making, recreating the Hollywood of 1969. He spent a lot of money and he spends a lot of screen time showing you it. There's so many scenes of just Brad Pitt driving around showing 69 Hollywood. The Manson stuff kind of felt like it's really, really thin in the background until they just want to go full Tarantino in the last 20 minutes or so. I felt like it could have been a bigger part of the movie, or they could have done it a little bit better than that. I enjoy the 2 characters of Brad Pitt and Leo DiCaprio. I enjoy their friendship. Brad Pitt was definitely the focus of the movie as far as me. He's the one that interested me the most. I think Sharon Tate is a waste in this movie, aside from just the things that Tarantino wants to set up for his final act. I think that the movie wastes her completely, and every single time that we cut back to her, I'm bored. I'm like, get back to them because this is going nowhere. So I'm giving a lot of negatives. If you want to watch my full review, there is a lot of good things as far as the technical aspects, the filmmaking, the stuff that Tarantino has never done wrong. It's all done right again in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but it's just a movie I didn't enjoy all that much. And just like Jacki Brown, this is one that I don't really think I'll probably be rewatching unless I do a Quentin Tarantino marathon. Number 7 is his previously most recent film, and that is The Hateful Eight. Now, I have not seen the extended cut, the one that they just put on Netflix where they split it into 4 like hour-long chapters. I hear it's actually better, even though it's longer, and length is one of the problems I have with this film. Sometimes that happens. Batman vs. Superman Ultimate Cut, longer movie, works better sometimes. But anyway, Hateful Eight. This is a film where I feel like Quentin Tarantino's self-indulgence really starts to show. You're gonna hear that a couple of times in this. I respect the dude, but he's definitely self-indulgent. But Hateful Eight is overly long. There's a lot of shots that take way too long to get to the point, a lot of dialogue scenes that take way too long to get to the point. All the same strengths are there. There's great dialogue, really interesting characters, great performances. It definitely gets bloody in this, which Quentin Tarantino's violence is always awesome. I like kind of the mystery aspect to it about, you know, who in this group of people in this isolated environment is bad guy and which one is good guy, even though they're all kind of baddish people. I like the kind of bottle movie aspect it goes for. They even reuse, or they use unused scores from The Thing, which warms my heart. But, you know, the good score, good direction. I like the setting. I like all the acting performances. It's just for the story that he's telling, which is kind of the same criticism I have with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he takes way too long to do it. And the film, to me, just kind of overstays its welcome a bit. I like it a lot more upon rewatch. I didn't really care for it at all upon first watch. Luckily, I rewatched it before doing this ranking, or it might have taken Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's place. But it's just a movie to me that I appreciate what he's going for. He's going for that kind of Reservoir Dogs style of, you know, almost like a play and different acts going on, and something in a very short, small environment, and almost like feeling like there's budgetary constraints when there really wasn't, but it just wasn't one of those movies that hits me the way that some of the ones above hit me. Number 6, this might be the most controversial pick on this list because this is most people's least favorite Tarantino film, including Tarantino himself. Number 6 is Death Proof. This is one half of Grindhouse, the little project that he did in the late 2000s, if you're not familiar with it. Rodriguez made a movie called Planet Terror. Tarantino made a movie called Death Proof. It was like a 4-hour-long, 3-hour-long double feature, kind of mimicking the old Grindhouse days with fake trailers and everything. It's a cool little experience. If you can get the Blu-ray of both of them, it's unique. But the second half of it, Death Proof, is a isolated film in itself. It's full length, and it is kind of Quentin Tarantino's take on a horror thriller slash Grindhouse. And it tells a story of a murderous stuntman played by the great Kurt Russell who is going after all these various women. And this is not Quentin Tarantino going for like his memorable, somewhat art house, like Oscar darling films like a lot of his movies are. This is not him trying to make Inglorious Bastards. This is him just trying to have fun. And Quentin Tarantino just trying to have fun, he still made a movie better than a lot of directors tend to make. People shit on this because it's just the type of movie that it is, but I actually think Death Proof is pretty damn underrated for what it can do. It is a little overly long. Again, it's just a common theme with Tarantino films. He doesn't really like to edit his shit back very much, but a little overly long, a little bit much with the dialogue, but I do like the fact that it's kind of split into half. You get the first set of victims, you get a lot of dialogue scenes, getting to know these 4 victims. Insert stuntman Mike. You don't really know if you like him because he's got that Kurt Russell charm. He's got a little bit of eeriness and creepiness about him with this big scar, but he's got this coolness to him too, which is just like everything that Kurt Russell does, kind of wrapped up into one character. Turns out he's a psychopath, murders all the people in the first half. Then you get introduced to a completely different group of girls. The movie kind of feels like it's resetting itself to a degree, and it's wash, rinse, repeat again, which is what bugs a lot of people, where you get another long dialogue, extensive scene where you get to know all these different girls, but they completely flip the script on Stuntman Mike and make for one hell of an entertaining third act. Awesome car stunts, the whole ship's mast thing, different car chases, the way that kind of Kurt Russell's masculinity gets spun on him. Like, if people talk about strong female characters and, you know, feminism and everything, like, this is doing that right in a very entertaining way. So I have a lot of fun with Death Proof. I think it's very underrated, and it is my 6th favorite of his films. Coming in at number 5 is Kill Bill. Now, this is a movie that when I first watched it, I will be completely honest with you, I didn't like it all. I'm not a fan of anime, I'm not a fan of like Japanese animation or kung fu cinema or anything like that. Never grew up on it, I'm probably never gonna be a fan of it. So the fact that Kill Bill, especially the first half, was so kind of dedicated to recreating that and playing a lot of love to that, it just didn't do anything for me. And none of the things that it was going for hit me at all, so I didn't like it at first. Went years without watching the second half, not realizing that was more spaghetti western. Finally did watch it probably in 2013, 2014. Really enjoyed it. And then I went back and watched the 2 movies back to back about 6 months ago to kind of refresh myself before Once Upon a Time in Hollywood came out. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. Kind of separating my stigma when I was a young, like 13-year-old when it came out and didn't really like that style. I watched it for what it was giving me, and it's a very entertaining movie. It's got a lot of really cool things about it. If you put them together, which is what I'm doing for this ranking, it covers a lot of bases. You get Hong Kong cinema, you get black and white, you get anime, you get spaghetti western, revenge tale, there's even superhero pop culture stuff thrown into there. As a 2-part chapter that's kind of mushed into one film, or even as individual films, they are very good. Kill Bill Volume 1 is probably a little bit better just because of all the action. It's very kind of front-loaded as the first chapter. The second chapter is a lot more dialogue, a lot more character-based, which I still enjoy, but together they make for one hell of an entertaining film that I think the more I rewatch it, I'll probably like it more, and it could climb up this list. Number 4, the one that started it all. Stuck in the middle with you. Reservoir Dogs. This is a great introduction for Quentin Tarantino. It's no question why this kind of exploded him onto the scene and he started getting money for movies like Pulp Fiction, which is really what kind of blew him up. This is one of those films that a lot of people kind of had to go back and visit after they saw the film that introduced them to Quentin Tarantino. I was of no exception to that. I did not see Reservoir Dogs first. It's a very small scale, low budget, simplified whodunit style film where you have a group of bank robbers with all different names relating to a color, and you basically see through non-chronological order, which is something that's typical for Quentin Tarantino, the lead up and the planning to this bank robbery and the aftermath after it all went wrong, and they find out that one of them is a mole for the cops, and it's about them trying to figure out, as well as you trying to figure out, who the hell that mole is. It's a very entertaining movie. It has all of the Quentin Tarantino like signature things that he kind of started with this one, like dialogue that seems to have nothing to do with the plot, but it's some of the most memorable scenes, like where he's sitting there talking about Like a Virgin, or you get Mr. Pink talking about the reasons why he doesn't tip at a restaurant. You have really good characters. The most memorable scene in the film with Mr. Blonde, which is Michael Madsen in one of his best roles, dancing around, cutting cops' ears off and all that crazy shit. There's a very bloody film, and despite the fact that I figured out who the mole was pretty early on whenever I first saw it, just because it seemed like misdirection to me that was obvious, I've heard a lot of people that didn't really figure it out until it was revealed. So it is a very successful whodunit from what I'm being told, but regardless of whether or not you figure it out or not, it's just a very entertaining movie that is so against the grain with how a movie like this would be in typical Hollywood fashion that it stands among the pack, and it hasn't aged a day since I watched it now. So you get a great performance from Harvey Keitel that really makes it stand out. A lot of great things about this. Just being small scale and simplified is something that probably holds it back from being in number 1 compared to the movies that are above it, because they're much more epic with this style of filmmaking. Now honestly, my number 3 and my number 2 are so damn close, they're probably interchangeable. Every single time I rewatch one, it's gonna jump up to number 2, and then they'll constantly be switching spaces. But for this most recent time, when I rewatched all of his films, my number 3 landed with Inglorious Bastards. This was kind of his return to form for me because, remember, at the time I was not a fan of Kill Bill. So you get this movie where Quentin Tarantino, the guy that did Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill and Reservoir Dogs and Death Proof, is going to be taking on World War II and Hitler, and I was going, huh? And it's awesome. It's one of his best films, it's one of his best scripts, it's one of his best directing efforts. This movie is damn near flawless. It's a little bit long, which again, common theme with criticisms for me with Quentin Tarantino. Some dialogue scenes feel like they go on just a tad long, a little bit too much. They overstay their welcome a bit. But aside from those, which are genuinely nitpicks with this film, great characters like Christoph Waltz's character of, I believe, Landy. Don't skewer me if I got that name wrong, but the Jew Hunter, that is a great character. It's no wonder why he got an Oscar for that and kind of exploded onto the scene. They were like, who the hell is this guy that Quentin Tarantino just got an Oscar? Brad Pitt, Aldo Rain, Aldo the Apache, Arrivederci. That's a great character and a great performance. The Inglorious Bastards themselves, like the whole setup, the violence, the way that you have this kind of side story going on with the character of Shoshana and her revenge against the Nazis, that great tense scene that opens the film, the great tense scene in that little bunker with Michael Fassbender. There's so many awesome things about this movie that even though it's long, even though there's so much going on, it just keeps moving and it's always entertaining, all the way up to the final frame, which is just a perfect ending to this story. Inglorious Bastards is damn near a masterpiece, if not a masterpiece. So like I said, interchangeable with my number 2, aside from my Hail to the King number 1 that probably will never change. Inglorious Bastards is the shit. That is my number 3. Number 2 today is Django Unchained. This was actually my first Quentin Tarantino film that I saw in the theaters. It was a great theater experience with a really funny story that I kind of told on my live stream with CP, so definitely check that out. Don't want to retell it here, it'll be way too much. But it's just an awesome movie. It's a classic style Western in a way that it's shot, but it's also very modern and kind of tackles the whole thing about slavery and kind of rechanging history in a very Tarantino way. I love the characters in this. Like, I'm not a Jamie Foxx fan, I've said this numerous times, but I love him as Django and I love that character. I don't see my negative stigma for Jamie when I watch this film. He's great in it. Christoph Waltz, I might even like him better in this as, you know, the dentist is what I'll call him, but he's basically the person that trains Django and his best friend and his partner through most of this film. I think he's even better in this than he was in Inglorious Bastards, and he won an Oscar for this as well, very deservedly so. Leo DiCaprio, probably my favorite villain in any of the Tarantino films as Calvin Candy. One of the greatest scenes, if not the greatest Tarantino scene for me, is the scene whenever he realizes that Django and the dentist are fooling him and he brings that skull out, and it's famously kind of talked about because he slams his fist down on the table whenever he loses his temper and smashes a glass, and it was totally ad-libbed by accident that he cut his hand open, and Leo DiCaprio just doesn't miss a beat and just keeps going with this entire long, what seems to be one-shot scene while his hand is sitting there bleeding, and it just totally adds this magic element to that scene. That's fucking phenomenal. So all of that, the action is great, the gore and the violence, it's like ketchup bottles explode every single time somebody gets shot, and it's great. It is slightly long. Once again, it's almost 3 hours long, if not 3 hours. So there's a couple of spots where they could tighten it up slightly, but again, with a movie this awesome, it's a nitpick. I love it to death. I love everything about this film, and rewatching it just reminded me how awesome Django Unchained is. But the king of Tarantino movies, my number 1, yes, is Pulp Fiction. This was a movie that I was introduced to pretty late. I think I was like 14 when I first saw it. And the first time that I watched it, it didn't quite hit me. I was like, oh, okay, it was a little bit weird. But there was something about it that made me want to watch it again. And then something about it that made me want to watch it again. And again. And again. And again, all the way through to today. There's things about Pulp Fiction where I put it on and like my favorite scene changes every single time that I watch it. There's so many great characters, great storylines, great dialogue exchanges in this film over and over again that it's just flawless. This is one of the most unique, awesome, and magical movies that you could watch in Hollywood. Like, this is something there's nothing else like Pulp Fiction. You get a bunch of random characters that seem to have nothing to do with each other, with their own weird plot lines going on, which seem to have nothing to do with each other. It's all told out of sequence. You get scenes where one character dies and then they show up later on, and it's kind of cool because it feels like they survived, and memorable characters like Jules and John Travolta's big return to form in Hollywood playing Vincent Vega, even characters like Bruce Willis as Butch, as this boxer that's supposed to throw a fight and then decides not to. Marcellus Wallace is like the big gangster who's kind of tying all of them together. God, this movie is awesome. So if you have not seen Pulp Fiction, hopefully I've sold you on it. I can't describe the plot of Pulp Fiction at all with one sentence. It's just too weird to talk about, but there's nothing else like Pulp Fiction. This movie is pure awesome and still is my number 1 Quentin Tarantino film. So that's it, guys. That is my ranking of the Quentin Tarantino filmography. What is yours? A lot of passionate views because this guy's got so many great films that I can understand any of them being at your number 1, number 2, all the way down to your worst ones. So a lot of varied opinions. Post yours down below and we will talk about it. and let me know what your thoughts are on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, his most recent film. So let's talk about all that, guys, down in the comment section. Please like and share this video. If you're not already a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. Got a lot of rankings and a couple Quentin Tarantino reviews. That is a review series I need to do one day, though. I need to catch up on that. And also check below for my Teespring store, which has got some great Cody Leach merchandise that you guys will like. You can just scroll down and it's right there, and you can fan through all the different designs right now. Also in the video description is my social media links like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel, help this channel grow, and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. So check all that out, guys. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, including other past rankings and past Quentin Tarantino reviews, you could check that out by clicking right over here.